Right.
Are we working?
We are.
Jim! Twitch works on the phone with the text. That'd be handy. Twitch chat on the text. Are we working?
We are.
We have to be cosy because we've only got one camera working. It's quite close.
Well, you just have to switch it from side to side.
Well, we can do side to side. We're used to that anyway. Oh, like this slightly. Zooming out.
Do we get to watch anything?
No.
Oh god, that's weird.
You've got to imagine. It's quite close.
You just have to
Use your
switch
imagination.
Side to side.
Well, we can do side to side. We're used to that anyway.
So we don't know what we look like. We're not watching anything, and we can't even play Mega Drive.
No, that's right. If we could play
Zooming
Bomberman, that'd be
Do we get to watch anything?
No.
Oh god, that's weird.
You've got to imagine. Have you started it yet?
I literally just got through the tutorial. Reminded myself
right.
how everything else
Yeah,
works.
well that's good actually. That's probably good.
I need to
Right.
change the controls a bit.
If you're going to sit without, I was going to say,
have to be
it's not a bad idea, but let's just put this under here.
We're slightly off centre.
The floor's uneven.
So you can
Yeah,
rotate
no,
the
the floor
camera
is
slightly
uneven.
anyway.
That's a lot better.
The whole building's uneven.
Zara did suggest you get your iPad and read Twitch chat.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do either of you?
Here.
Do either of you have an iPad?
At home,
Right.
I should have thought about that, shouldn't we?
Don't have a laptop or anything?
I've got a laptop here, but it's which you can use maybe depending on the range of the battery.
Yeah. Well, we don't need that lamp, so...
That's true. Well, I was going to say you don't actually. Well, the cable's a bit longer than that. And you could have not unplugged
Well, at least
the lamp
this way
as
we
well.
won't accidentally stretch your cable, which is like important.
It's your
Smash the
computer.
place up.
I'd like you this an Ultrabook.
Twitch.
You guys want to give me an Ultrabook? Obviously, now is not a good time since we're live online. But I was going to say, James, there's no reason not to tell Jim.
Space. Yeah. Fractured space.
Right. Now I'm giving you a laptop, so.
It's me looking at my phone at the top of my own head.
Do we have any questions yet? No, still no questions. Is bad.
I'm vanished behind a little bottle. There you go. 5 minutes ago, I'm just going to slightly move
It's
in.
30 seconds.
Okay.
I'm watching your phone.
This would be an endless loop of us watching ourselves.
Yeah, and adjusting position.
There's some chat there, but I can't quite see it. It's not going to do it. Kind of. Yeah. Right.
Excuse me. That's going to be blocked too much, I'm afraid.
Magic.
Good. That shouldn't block in, I think. There's your chat. I don't know if I can make it any bigger, but.
There you go. Silence.
Right. So, how are ships coming along like the carrier? Repeat the question.
Yeah, the carrier. Okay. At the moment, since we got back from Christmas, we've been spent a lot of time doing a lot of very urgent fixes to the game and getting some stuff out of the way. And then I've been moving on with developing new ships, but because the carrier specifically is dependent on a whole new other set of systems, we haven't moved anywhere with the carrier yet, to be honest. But we have.
Art have a bit.
Oh, we have the ship. We actually have the hull. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Which we
Yeah.
should probably release pictures of, actually, just to show people what it'll look like. But as we've discussed before, what with the carrier will be is basically proof of what we want to do with small ships and small ship combat. So that's things like flak taking out missiles and small ships affecting each other, using launch bay abilities so that they interact much more with things like ships being launched from home bases to attack, using mining drones to actually get resources and give a visual impression of how you're gathering resources that then get interrupted if you attack a mining station. There's a lot of stuff we want to do with how those things work, and those systems are what will make the carrier work. So that's turned into a large task. And at the moment we're doing some cleanup. There will be new ships coming, but it won't be the carrier.
Not the carrier, yeah.
The carrier will
The carrier obviously fighter-to-fighter interaction, fighter-removing fighters.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody pops onto the forums and look at the great ideas people have put down on the carrier, I mean, there are lots of disparate ways to approach it, but all of them basically understand that for the carrier to work, the systems we have on small ships need to expand, and that's basically what we've got to do.
No, it doesn't work. There you
Can you read the chat?
go. It's a bit
you
small.
can.
So it says, tell me all about the Zarek Enforcer. That is for sure totally going to be in the next sprint.
How do they know it's called the Zarek Enforcer?
It's magic. It's amazing. The Trello?
Oh yes, no, Dylan might have used that. Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
Enforcer's actually a temporary name we're using that might stick with actually. The Zarek Enforcer is a close-range attack ship, so the nearest thing we have to it currently is the Hunter, and it's one of the ones I'm developing to get in quickly rather than wait on new systems. It's designed specifically to attack and hold capture areas, so forward stations, resource areas, and its most unique feature is it has a specific weapon system with a rapid-fire volley, and what you need to do is get relatively close, and you have to land a succession of hits from the volley because the damage exponentially goes up. So your first few hits do very little to nothing damage, but if you land the entire volley, the consecutive value of the damage increases massively. So it's very powerful, much like in many ways similar to the Assassin. If you can land the full volley, there's massive damage, but if you miss something, your damage is radically reduced.
So it matters if you miss the first few then.
If you miss any of them, then the extended damage drops. So you only start from hits and build from hits.
So it's kind of like you're boring a hole in a way, I suppose.
Not really.
No,
But
I mean, not visually, but,
each one adds to the damage. So it enforces like close range attacks, much like the Assassin, but it doesn't have that ambush style. And the other abilities are about capturing, holding, and enforcing capture and small areas. So it's not really a combination Assassin Hunter, but that's the nearest way to look at it, I guess.
And how's that progressing then?
I'm
Seeing as Zerid said, it's totally going to be in the next sprint.
it's meant to be. I've got a prototype that works. I should be getting a hull from ARP tomorrow with sockets. I should be able to put those in. That should be playable for me in a few days. And then there's all the stuff that goes on top of that, like
Testing it.
Testing it to make sure it's not going to completely break the game. Gets a good set of balance until we're happy to let people tell us it's unbalanced. And then there's stuff like as much specific audio as we get, visual effects for it, all those levels. Plus, the hull I get won't be a finished art asset, and art will want to do lots of things to it, much of which can happen after release. Like you'll start seeing decals and manufacturer logos appearing on the ships soon. Obviously, they haven't been there, and we've released those ships, so that stuff can come in later, and like cool lighting passes and stuff like that.
Yeah. The intention is obviously for us to be. It's in the sprint. Then that's true. It's just when we can actually get it out to release is the key thing.
There's two ships. Basically the two ships I'm currently working on are a third manufacturer small ship, the Corvette, and the Enforcer. Those aren't going to be completely game-changing ships. They're very different play styles, with very different role within the game, but they're built out of systems we have. We're building those at the moment because we want to get more ships and more ways to play, but what we want to move towards is things like Carrier, where the game is evolving with the introduction of ships like that. But they take longer.
Rainbow Dar says, "Tell me more about my hunter." It's slightly.
Your hunter's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything happening with the hunter? It's got loads of the various.
The hunter's got some. Well, there's worth bringing up actually. So, we've all kind of played while we were on break over Christmas and looked at it, and I think if we can get some, obviously there's a huge overhead in trying to get the new ships in, getting fixes in, some new content and everything else. But what we want to do is step back and look at the frigates, possibly OP now. There's some bizarre bugs with one of the disruptor weapons that we can't locate and stuff like that. But I think it's clear that the flagship and the Hunter probably need a little love as well, in terms of trying to bring them back to that shape they were in at one point, where the flagship was hard enough to control an area and the Hunter was something to be afraid of, and it feels like that's not there anymore. So I think just the default loadouts need to look at when we can get some time. But what you mentioned, the side grades, the Hunter has possibly the fullest side grade set, and it'd be nice to know.
We thought we almost had a standard word for that.
Loadouts.
Loadouts.
Loadouts is a better term. Side grades, horrible internal term.
Try and use it, call it loadouts.
Yeah. And it'd be nice to know. Al, especially, who kind of put them all together, is very keen to hear what people think about the various options, because he's done versions or alternate weapons and systems that involve a lot of work, and he's done ones that are actually very, very quick. And we'd like to hear feedback on which ones people like, which ones they don't. We care less about the visuals. None of the visuals on those weapons have actually been touched by art. It's all design. But we do care about what plays and what you want to see on those loadout options, so that we can tune what we make more to what the community wants, rather than what we can either make quickly or slowly.
If you're out there, Ray Wadar, if you could follow up on your comment and tell us if there's any specific you want us to talk about the Hunter, apart from, we're working on it still, we're working on all of them still, and Al is interested to hear what people have got to say, and is no doubt going to make tweaks and changes whilst he also starts applying loadouts to other ships as well. It's interesting. Zerid made a comment on when you were talking about the Sarek Enforcer.
Yeah.
He says, "Ooh, kind of like how the pulse lasers from the BattleTech universe work on full." I think that's going to be heat. No, in the fluff.
Fluff.
It says fluff. Neat.
You know BattleTech better than me.
So
I remember BattleTech.
yeah,
From time ago. Possibly.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Possibly. I know. I played BattleTech a long time ago.
I did a
Mech
long
Warrior
time ago. Yeah.
BattleTech, the board game, not for a long time.
Yeah.
And then Zerid went on to say that the Hunter still if it's well played, makes him cry, because it is true. Hunter well played. Well, actually, Zerid, I was playing against you in the Hunter the other night, and with the rapid blink, especially when you're a sniper, you can get the Hunter can take him on position anytime.
Well, Stanith is. I'm sure you guys have seen him out there. Stanith is a big believer in the Hunter, and he plays him very, very dangerously. It's funny because it played if you're not careful. I suppose it's the same true of any of the big attack ships. If you don't play them in a certain way, you can feel like they're completely underpowered. If you play them correctly, that they're lethal. But
Whitey YP says, speaking about the loadouts, how's that work coming on the mechanics? So I guess probably just thinking about more loadouts for the ships that exist, and then going forwards.
Yeah, we have a lot of requests we've got for systems that help us make a lot more loadouts, more interesting loadouts, do interesting things with missiles and warheads, and how we affect the game just with different things we can put on existing ships. But as I was saying earlier, we've got a lot of there's some serious problems that come in that we've noticed over Christmas that we have to fix: frame rate issues, crash bugs and stuff. And as a result, that's
not very rare crash bugs.
Well, not crash bugs, but but class A bugs, we say. But so as a result, the requests we put in for additional features to create the loadouts have been stalled a little while, so we can focus on making the game play as well as possible. But we will get back to that. But in order to inform what our priorities should be, getting back to us on what you think of the current loadouts, what kind of things you like, would be really useful.
On loadouts, it's interesting listening to a few of the conversations been going on. Obviously, there's loadouts options that are more unusual, so it's more extremes, and that requires, I suppose, custom code written for it. but also there's loadouts which are actually more. This thing is faster, but something else, and this thing is slower, but something else. High dimension. And actually, I wonder what please feel free to write in. What we're talking about is like whether you actually enjoy just those varieties, rather than it all being about things that are just radically different as well.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I'd like to hear more feedback on the side grades, upper grades, loadouts. Sorry, those stuff things that you select in the front end. A good example is so Al's done a lot of very different things like the scalpel laser, which is awesome, and some really interesting things he's put on the ships. But a really hideously simple example is there was a discussion about how people were using, I know previous Twitch possibly, about how people were using the decoy on the assassin because there were bugs with it at the time and everybody could tell it was a decoy. So it wasn't very good as a distraction to an attacking player, but people were using the decoy as a shield, or they were using it to hop across the level. And so in the loadout options at the moment, there's a shield and a jump decoy, and all those are incredibly simple, 5 minutes to make, where we increase the health on one of the decoys so you can use it better as a shield, and we increase the distance on the other one so you can use it better to help across the map. And they have some downsides, so they all work out roughly equal, but those are incredibly simple to make and incredibly boring. But if people find those useful, or they adapt to the way they play, or they can play better because they have those options, we can create a lot of those. But if they're confusing or they're not satisfying at all, then we wouldn't waste our time. We'd focus on things that are more interesting.
I wouldn't say incredibly boring. I think the
boring's the wrong word.
Yeah,
I guess the thing is, if you could look at them and not understand what they're for, or not think that's a viable way to play, but obviously they came out of feedback we had in the game.
Yeah.
So it's
I suppose what you mean by that is that
incredibly fun.
There's things where you could have a weapon, a very, very different thing that is almost in another different weapon, and then another different weapon again. Whereas you could actually have a weapon which is faster, less damage, slower, more damage, and actually
so a better example,
those are perfectly enjoyable. And
so a better example would be one of Al's ones, where he took the blaster on the disruptor and he made the ripple blaster and the faster blaster, which were literally just rate of fire and warhead changes. So the standard gun on the disruptor fires 3 shots at a time. He altered it so that he had a gun that fired 1 at a time but 3 times as fast, and another one that fires a succession of 3 bullets in a time scale, so that the guns actually, the DPS is equivalent, but because the ripple blaster hits 3 shots, it has a damage spike. The faster blasters are persistent, so it's easy to track and fire, and the other one you want to get close and land your 3 shots. So there's subtle plays, and again, those are very simple changes to make and try, and very easy to make as lots of variants and make variants that push the boundaries of what you can do with rate of fire.
Yeah, because if you think, when you think about it, when you've got, say, you've got a Counter-Strike machine gun, you've got your MP5s, and then you've got your sniper rifle at the other end, and actually there's still guns that fire, but actually that still is perfectly viable as well. You don't always have to be grenade launchers versus tripwires and things like that.
It's worth saying that, for me anyway, the ships themselves should be different ways to play, and the loadouts should be fine-tuning on that. So the loadouts shouldn't be so different that they change what a ship's for. So they should be relatively simple changes that are tuned to how you want a frigate to play or a sniper to play. And that, for me, would be the way to go. But again, we want to see what kind of loadouts people buy into.
That's good to hear. So Zerid makes a comment about the mouse in the way, about background and about MechWarrior, but we'll look at that later. So X94 Ninja ZX, are there going to be any more support ships?
Yes, yes. there'll be several. We noticed with the original loadout that we had 2 support ships, 3. Originally the frigate was intended to be a support ship. It's now become a kind of light attack craft. So there's a spot there that needs to be expanded on. The next 2 ships that I'm putting together, one is the Enforcer and one is the Corvette. The Corvette is a support craft. I'm still playing with the loadout. I don't want to go in too far with it, but
got to keep some surprises.
Yeah, I've got to keep something back, and I might change my mind tomorrow. So it's that'll be a support craft. So, and beyond that, some of the ships we have in concept and construction, there's another couple of small ships coming in as well. So there's more coming.
there is more coming.
But also, I think support ships, getting those kind of roles that aren't straight attack or tanky, and getting them right is always very, very hard. But the heart of the game usually lives in those kind of ships, those kind of roles. So I think they're really important. And what we want to do is try in lots of different ways where you can play a game and be the vital part of a game without necessarily having to kill everybody or take all the damage. Or
no, absolutely. Plus, as some of the new mechanics evolve around the game mode as well.
Then roles for the support ships come in to support the game mode.
I can see it coming
Absolutely.
with what I've seen happening.
And on the forums, there's discussion about the frigate and why it's the way it is, and largely it's because the game mode's changed. The role we had for the frigate disappeared, and so it became something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think with the way the game mode's evolving offline at the moment, there's a lot of room there for interesting support roles.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things we talked about visibility and stuff might mean the support roles change and really well, all kinds. Zerid said, I'd like to request lower game volume.
That was quite a while ago and already been done.
Oh well, there you go then. That was for Bungle, and he's fully aware of it. Right, okay, you too. Zerid, I can't speak to the shield decoy, but having the jump decoy in my pocket for sticky spots is fantastic, even if I don't end up using it that often, which kind of agrees with what you say.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, actually, not surprised I suppose, but actually the decoy, just seeing a ship on screen, it still means that for a few seconds you're distracted.
Yeah, just
even if
hesitation,
it is, says it's level 0, it's not moving, that hesitation is enough. That I've been foxed by it enough that somebody can close or whatever. So
I mean, it's something we want to work to, so it's possibly it's more involving. But
on that note,
on that note, says Bungle.
Bungle's coming in.
On that note, I'd like to say that I find the jump decoy less useful, especially when you're moving, because if you're moving, you'll often move out of range the second you put it down. Because it goes at your maximum jump distance is the distance of.
Yeah, if you're moving towards
if you're moving, but if you're moving, say, if you're moving in any direction except towards it.
Obviously, but the whole point of the jump decoy is to travel the distance you're travelling, in which case you'd never move out of range if you're moving towards it.
I suppose that's true, but it does take a long time to target.
But, yeah, actually right. If you're using it like a traditional decoy, where you cloak and jump, then you don't have that freedom of movement to jump back. Yeah,
I generally use the shield, and it also lasts a very short amount of time.
Yeah, because it's the sacrifice for distance is the duration, because it's used for hopping.
See, we brought up Bungle's favourite ship, and look what happened.
Yeah.
So there you go. And Zerid mentions, and both the disruptor weapon options, even though they're simple, they're awesome in my opinion. So
that's great to hear. Actually, I'll be really happy to hear that. And that, if that's true, we can very quickly expand options, and even if we create a number of loadouts and across the ships that work in a similar fashion, and ask you guys to feed back on it. Even if we end up throwing away half of them, finding the ones that people like and then polishing those would be worth it. It'd be really good. So nice to hear more. But if that's the way we go, that'd be great, because we can throw you guys a lot of stuff very quickly.
I mean, if that's supported, which it looks like there is, and I personally I do feel that. That they don't have to be weird and wonderful for every occasion. Yeah. It's nice, but it doesn't have to be.
You want to hold stuff back for new ships too,
so Raybadar says, I forget if it's been answered, but it's just moved. But will there be environmental hazards in a jungle or at Gamma?
Yes, is the short version. What form they take is a different issue. We've often talked about the sectors having very different feels, and like a nebula filled sector and environment that you move through that can cause harm to the ships. But even beyond that, Will, who's working on a lot of the game mode stuff, is very keen to get in concepts of neutral turrets which would attack any team. I definitely want to see the central section expand out. At the moment it's literally just a position for the gas facility, and there should be more there. But in terms of jungling, yes, to the extent that there needs to be other features in the game, but and yet also that there needs to be a role for a spare player is the wrong word, but the guy that's free to support the other two lanes should have a role that he can be doing that pushes the game forward beyond resource capture. But whilst Fractured Space has many MOBA elements, it's also far more complex in the fact it's 3D, it's multi-turreted, and the way the ships work, that we have to be careful about where we add the complexity. And one of the things we're keen to do is add depth and complexity through involving the systems, much like you talk about small ships and the carrier. So when neutral environments or jungle style stuff comes out of those, for example, we intend on using small ships to act as context and attack for mining stations, have turrets and ships come out of enemy bases, but also have neutral components where that can attack the teams. When they're coming out of systems we have, then it's fine. We've got to be careful we're not adding distraction is the wrong word.
Well, there's a couple of things, isn't there?
Loose ends.
There's also the game mode time, isn't it?
Yeah,
We're keen not to end up with a 45-minute to an hour game, because you get more drop off, you get more rage quit if you know it's not going your way. So we've got to be careful on balancing the game. However, there has been talk about different cool things we can do in the map. There's more things that will be possible with stuff I've seen on the desk behind me today. So that will allow different things to happen. On the basically space clouds, the thing at the moment is that we're optimizing the game to run more quickly. The worst thing that anybody wants is for us to then make it much slower by putting in giant alpha'd polygons all over the place, which will look cool when we do it. But right now, space clouds is going to be.
James is talking about areas of effect and moving to areas that affect the ships. Obviously, that wouldn't affect like neutral turrets or neutral objectives that would attack either team.
So hazards, but certainly it's more than just atmosphere, because it will change your view range and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Space bush as well as the other way we've described it. But in-house names. So there's those kind of things. And there's been a good number of ideas, and put it on the forums. Talk about what other things you could imagine dotted around that would complement but not necessarily slow down the game. I think that's the key there as well. Right, let's see what else you got before too many come. From other source, so that might be Bungle typing this in. What are the plans to discourage even more to stop people quitting early?
I think first off, there's been some. We're very much aware that we don't want people to be quitting games. We want teams to be together, but we can only expect that from people when the game runs at reasonable frame rate, when we're providing a game that you should stay in. And recently we've had some bugs that have possibly made that not true for some people. We want to make the game run at a better rate on a wider variety of machines, I guess. So that if the game's more stable and more playable, then I think it's okay for us to say, we want you to stay in this game, and if you quit early, we will penalise you. We've started introducing support for that, the leaderboards and the honour system and stuff. That will make much more sense when we have an ongoing economy, when we are rewarding players for actions in game, when all that is tied in and makes sense.
There's a whole number of things. I mean, when the loadouts require XP to unlock, and if you quit, you don't get XP, then you're going to care.
Yeah. You basically won't be able to progress through content unless you play games.
Yeah, exactly. So those things are all going to matter. I think just clear communication on objective for anybody who's new, so they're not going, well, we're losing, but I don't actually know how and when we're going to win. And all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff also dependent on when we actually get a decent history on player records and matchmaking system. And something we've often talked about internally is this idea that if you do get a large number of players that end up quitting games and you have an honour system where you can rate them, then we'll just matchmake them against people that do similar things, and people that stay in games and finish them wouldn't get matchmade against people that are less likely to stay in a game. Yeah. So there's multiple ways we can do it, but a lot of it's dependent on us, one, giving you a game that you want to stay in the first place, and two, creating the systems to support matchmaking, to support economy and unlock an XP progression.
There's probably about 10 different things.
Is that the short version? That's the short answer. There's 10 different things. Don't worry about it.
I think we've gone through it. We've gone through a bunch and it's not sorted. There's a lot to do. Yeah. There's a lot to do, which is the answer to a lot of things. Swift SWAF 1, or SWAFy, maybe just with a 1. I just tuned in. Is there any ETA for the normal release of the game? So, and you put normal in inverted commas, which is the right thing to do because these games, like ours, progress forever, hopefully. And what we're working towards at the moment is, if we're in early access, then we'll be producing more content during early access. At some point, we will come out of early access and into the free-to-play section on Steam. I would hope that that's going to be, well, it's definitely going to be this year. I would hope that it's going to be late spring, early summer. That's a bit vague, but actually it all depends on our ability to accelerate at this point. So we're hoping to get some promotion coming soon. That will bring in more players, it will accelerate what we can do, and with the team accelerating as well, as they move away from some of the things they had to do in the early days to get the game running, and into the things that allow us to get towards the normal release.
Yeah.
But at least I suppose at that point we would describe ourselves as in a beta period. So it's moving from what we describe as kind of alpha now, I suppose, in some terms, although everybody's got different terms these days.
Yeah.
Certainly compared to when we used to do console
Box
games,
products,
box
yeah.
products, all that kind of stuff. And so certainly, I would hope that it's going to be, let's say early summer, when we move from the free to play into the beta area, which will mean that we've got a great deal of content. We'll have a good number of the features we've talked about. We're talking about matchmaking and so on, all those things in place, and then it's mostly about the main core features being done, and then it's all about, from that point onwards, mostly about content, and then about bigger things that when you start to go, right, okay, let's talk about the meta game over and above the game itself, the conquering of the universe as clans and all that kind of stuff, and that's the stuff you start to worry about once you get to that stage. The big and grandiose stuff beyond the core game, which is where we are now. We're really concentrating the core of the core game. Hope that helps anyway. So, Fractured Space from the game. Plan to optimize and fix frame rate issues. Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the next, pretty much the next month, so the team came back from their Christmas holidays, and that's our focus. The last patch, even though it's a bit of a mystery as to why, the last patch update just pre-Christmas seemed to slow things down even more. A couple of things we knew why, but we fixed those actually still just before Christmas. But there seems to be some things that have crept in. Maybe it's some updates from some of the third-party software we use to integrate into our game. We're due an Unreal update as well, which will speed things up. We're aware it can do something with some new settings. But basically, all the coders are sat there profiling. We've got we're running up dev games, and you'll see on the servers when we're running up dev games, see it occasionally pop up on there, and that's us. We're profiling the game on various machines and seeing what seems to be slowing down. And as with all games, it's sometimes the strangest things that you find out. There was one today which was weird. I can't remember what it was now. Oh yes, the detect spheres are probably 4 times more expensive than they should be. This afternoon. So there you go. It's like things like that.
We'll completely rebuild those, but it's and we're also finding some machines with specific setups were really hardly hit by the patch, and I think that's got to be our priority: stability and frame rate. So we were talking earlier about content. That stuff has to wait.
Stability obviously was in the early days, and that's much better.
Oh no, absolutely.
But frame rate for sure, and obviously some things affect people in different ways. So if you've got a good CPU and a not so good graphics card, you'll see a different thing than a guy who's got a not so good CPU and a good graphics card, because we're both CPU and GPU bound, so in different areas. So you might get different complaints, let's put it that way. So we're having to look at that around the office as well. But believe you me, that's the buzzword around here, and in fact it has meant that we've actually sacrificed a little bit of content in the roadmap, and they'll have to update Trello, because some of those things are going to slip a little bit because of the need to concentrate on frame rate so that more people can enjoy the game without suffering with such big frame rate drops, which happens more than we'd like. Right, looking back here, Zerid, simple changes to weapons like that to weapons can be awesome. You can flesh out and upgrade trees with half-step style weapons like the Disruptor has. Then use that kind of formula to turn 3 really different weapons into 9.
Absolutely.
It kind of agrees with what we're saying, which is good. YDYP, is there also plans for the ability to upgrade your home base or captures forward bases with spending resources on them?
Well, at the moment, the game mode is evolving so very differently that a number of those things wouldn't make sense in the nicest possible way, because some of the changes we're making is possibly forward stations would never change hands. Just the functionality of the forward station would change depending on the actions of the players. I won't go into more detail on that yet, but I guess the best way to answer that question is, could you use resources for anything other than the ship's upgrading? At the moment, we don't have any plans to, but an earlier question was about would there be objectives outside for things like jungling or exploring on the outskirts of the levels, or things you could do for a free player. And I guess for that to exist, then there'd need to be a reason for them to be collecting resources beyond upgrading. I think, if I'm honest, that's a really interesting discussion that maybe we should have on the forums, but we'd probably table those ideas until we've got the game mode that's internally that we're working on into a state where you guys can play it and have a look, because I think it's going in a very different direction to where it is now, in terms of you won't be capturing enemy bases, essentially you'll be destroying them. You won't be, forward stations, Alpha 1, Alpha 2, Beta 2, Beta 1, won't be captured specifically, you'll just be destroying jump inhibitors and taking down turrets. So that aspect of the game will change quite a bit, so maybe when we get
I
that
can
out.
see a mechanical problem potentially with that as well, is that if you spend resources on...
There's a massive problem for griefing that you could...
well, griefing, and also just slowing the game down potentially as well, because you're upgrading to be able to have a crescendo to take the
to finish
enemy base, and if you're bolstering your enemy base, then you're basically just going
I guess
like
the argument is that rather than push to finish, you could push to defend.
You could, yes. Yeah.
And
but
I
again,
think
that might slow things down.
again,
still,
there's that balance. I think
yeah. It's an interesting one.
it's I think it's a layer that would sit on top of a polished game mode, and we've got to change. We're changing the game mode, so it's a discussion to have later. I think.
I like Zerid's one in a minute, but I'm going to... Yes?
I was just going to say, just before we get onto that, I'm going to show the new skins briefly, if you'd like to talk about them as I...
Ooh,
okay.
So this
have we actually published
So
the lore on it?
Flagship normal,
Yeah, I'm seeing flagship normal.
flagship special.
No, I'm seeing the frigate.
The flagship special was...
You're 30 seconds behind.
Yes, I know. Right. So what you're saying is, don't look at that screen.
Don't look at the
Talk
screen.
about what you say.
Yes,
okay.
you're now
Say
looking
what
at
you
flagship-
see.
Look at flagship special, now talk about it.
Flagship special, right? So we're flagship special as far as we're concerned.
Okay, so there's a couple of things. One, we want to provide skins. We want to allow you to customize the way your ship looks. We were keen that skins weren't just texture swaps or material swaps, and I think the Goliath is the main candidate for this. It is actually a separate mesh. It's a separately built ship, and it has its own little private bit of lore that I might get to in a minute. But the Goliath basically is a separate, older version of the flagship, and all the other skins kind of fall off that. The way the lore goes, I don't know if we put it up on the forums or the...
Nope.
Yeah, but the basic thing is the manufacturer, USR, were essentially building the flagship, and it's this massive ship that has a lot of people on it, and it's very expensive to run, and it's not a fast ship. It's not a easily relocatable or a ship that can adapt easy to circumstance, because it's big and it's slow. So their ship wasn't selling, if you like. And then there's this story of the Goliath, which is a unique variant of the flagship that a ship colony made to its own purposes. And the Goliath has this amazing battle and does incredibly well and changes the fortunes of an entire company. And as a result, they reskinned their existing ships of the time to emulate the Goliath. So you have the Goliath skin, which is the flagship variant, and then you have the Type Gs for both Sniper.
Sniper.
Which order are you doing them in?
Sniper G.
The Sniper G, which is the Goliath influenced skin. You have, which one are you doing next?
Assassin.
The Assassin and the Assassin Type G, Goliath influenced skin, and the Disruptor and Disruptor Type G. And they're all kind of fit into this part of that history of that company. The theory is that the pure white versions actually came later after they became successful. But there are all these alternate versions. All the Type Gs are material changes on the craft, although we treat them internally as separate wholes. The Goliath is the only unique shaped ship.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at coming into a couple of things coming out of all that. So YDYP says about the free-to-play part, how are we going to handle microtransactions and so on. So obviously that goes back really to looking at those skins. That's our sort of first foray into where things will go, because you've got, I suppose, texture changes, so material and texture changes, which makes for example, like the Sniper and the Disruptor and so on, that were there. And then you've got model changes, which go beyond just a simple skin to a true model change, and that would be something that we bring into the monetization. So people customization and monetization, and then you've got things like decals, which at the moment isn't in there yet. But
people not as option. We're adding decals to the standard meshes.
That's right, but nobody can change them yet. So decal changes, things like that. The crew at the moment, we are pushing that back until we can get the crew in as a full system, and then the crew there'll be monetization involved in the crew in time and customization of crew, and having a very, very unique grand crew, legendary crew.
I mean, the one of the things on the jumping on the skins, because I mentioned it earlier, is a lot of the guys looking at the skins are aware of what how, for example, LOL skins have evolved from simple texture swaps into whole new special effects, all new shape, new voiceover and everything. The Goliath actually does have some unique VFX. It has a specific engine component that burns and then ignites with unique audio. And it's not, I mean, we may end up doing much more, but it's special. It's unique VFX, unique audio, unique mesh, and those kind of, like, if you like, I don't know, premium variants of existing ships is something not only that hopefully is appealing to get, but also we can tie into the narrative, explain the lore. And so, like, the Goliath existed at a specific time in history, had a specific role, and we can start having these uniquely identifiable ships. And I was going to mention about something else.
You'll remember it in a minute, I'm sure. So I mean, there's a whole list of things that we want to do and have been suggested, and some things that we might try and then take them out because they don't work. So in time, people will probably have boosts and accelerators. We've got some pretty neat ideas for team boosters that people might get to boost the XP of the team, and monetizing on those. There potential hangar customizations when we put it like a hangar starbase, however that evolves in time. I'm trying to think. There's a list of about probably about 10 or 12 different things, I think. But I mean, the thing is, we're looking at what other people are doing basically, and what we think the best of the rest are up to in terms of free-to-play monetization, making sure that it's fair, it's not pay to win, importantly, and that it's something that is being handled well by some people, and it's what we would think is fair and fine and enjoyable to customize, or to monetize. And we want to be cautious about not going too far, because a few games have sort of, I suppose the American word is nickel and dimed it, where they've just like picked almost every single thing. We've got a list of about 40 things that you can monetize, and it just probably takes it a bit too far, and it doesn't seem necessary really. But I suppose that's partly my opinion.
Also, I mean, you'll see games that purely monetize the visuals and the customization. And that is a great way to approach it, but you also see games doing it where you look at what they're offering you and you don't want any of it. And that's great for the guys that are playing through the content, putting in the games and everything, but that's not good for us in terms of giving you things or giving the community things that they're willing to pay for. if we're providing stuff that they don't want, then that's no good for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting that although it probably won't affect everybody who's listening now on this conversation particularly, but it changes. It changes around the world as well. What people like to have monetized, in fact, expect to have monetized in games changes drastically. At the moment, Fractured Space is only available in Western Europe and North America. So actually, for those audiences, they're actually very similar. So that's fine. But as we expand around the world, we'll actually probably have to have slightly different variations on monetization and different servers because of that in some of the different places around the world, which is going to be more work. But there you go, that too. So moving onwards. So there's some agreeing looking at this, although Zerid, when you say about if unlocking ships was tied to monies, I would flip all the tables. If you could expand on that, unless you understand that.
Unlocking ships tied to monies? Did you say that?
Anyway, if you
no.
Do you understand the comment?
I don't understand where the comment comes from. I will say
well,
that
we were talking about not monies as in real money, but XP or sort of, XP over time. Is that related to that? Perhaps?
we talked about I mean, we talked about this before, but the way we're expecting players to get through content, which includes ships as well as loadouts, would be that we have a tiered structure where you play through and you it would expand both ways from what we have, but you start off with a new player would come in and start with relatively easy to play or middle of the road ships, and you'd push through a tier and find more extreme ways to play the game, all of which theoretically, if they're playing together, would be balanced. But the further you go through the tier, the more harder but possibly more worthwhile experience you'd find. Those would be unlocked either through...
Or you might have more options. Well,
Yeah.
Obviously better, but you
Yeah.
have more options in the later.
But those would be unlocked through XP, which is earned through play, and then, but theoretically, we would allow people to accelerate their ability to unlock through premium accounts or whatever. But the play would unlock content is the main thing. We've mentioned this before, and we've gone over it before, and that's our current intention. Obviously, some games like League of Legends have a flat tier where you can unlock anything. You just play until you earn the currency and unlock whichever one you like. The worry there is, I think, that there's nothing. That situation of getting a champion in LoL is the hardest thing to play. But you bought it because you like the look of it, and now you can't do anything with it. The ability to be able to channel players through a way to play, so you go from something like the sniper into one of the ships we're developing called the railgun ship, which is an extreme version of a sniper. You wouldn't want to get there until you know how to play that style of ship. So having play unlock styles and extreme styles makes sense to us. But as always, it'd be interesting to hear what people think. We're not planning on unlocking ships according to real money.
Not for real money, yeah. So that's key. And then, in fact, Zerid, I think, looking at your last comment, that's the key. We've got currently no intention of having like the LoL champion system where you can unlock through time, or if you want to skip it, just go and pay for it outright. We've had lots of discussions about that. That's not our intention. Is to have, what did you call it just now? Not the extreme sniper. It's called
Railgun ship.
The railgun ship.
It's not this final name.
So say the railgun ship is down there somewhere, and you've got to.
It's the one you were
unlock it.
talking about years ago, but yeah.
Yes, I've forgotten. It's been a long day. Is that you can't just bypass it by just throwing cash at it. There's other ways that we'd like to see monetization happen, mostly around customization, and there might be some very interesting ships that we put off the beaten track, which aren't better, but are something that you might want to have a little badge of honour and say, I own the bloody blah, and that's kind of cool because you do, right? Whatever it is.
Bloody blah.
The bloody blah ship. And so on. So sort of getting off monetization for a bit, but we can always come back to it, it's no problem. So quite a few ones is why has the Code Wizard not blessed us with distance indicators? That's very relevant for today.
It's very that should be coming in soon. Yes.
Yeah, it's coming in soon. So at the moment there's going to be an initial pass.
Code Wizard is on it.
Code Wizard is on it. There's going to be an initial pass on distance indication and how that works. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It hasn't been there. It's going to be there, and then we'll probably iterate on it and make it better.
The short version is the easiest, simplest solution, but it's not a complete solution by any shape or means. It's literally just to get range to target on, so you can learn when your systems are not in target. We have a more involved system because we have ships with multiple systems, up to 5 different ranged systems that may or may not affect your current target, both of which you are moving in 3D space. Some of those weapons won't fire in a straight line, and so a range indication isn't necessarily accurate if you're running from down the aft of the camera. So there's a number of complex issues, so we have a more involved system theoretically that would give you indication of when you're in range of any specific system. It's all further complicated, of course, by the fact that the range for a specific system has to account for the fact that the turrets firing that system are in different positions in 3D space themselves. So you could have 6 turrets all in different 3D space, all with different actual ranges to your actual target. But we have a system to help with that, but the quick version will be getting in range to target so you guys can learn when something should be fired on and not fired.
And some of the things that have slowed down on that, or would be done, we've actually been doing some recoding on the HUD, and until that's done, that does mean that some things that would probably be quick and easy to put in the HUD, we don't want to do now, and also because of the optimization. So, for example,
the guys will know that the HUD is one of the things that slows the games down so much, and we have to resolve.
So one of the bizarrest things that we found out yesterday is that the grey thing that fills up your your cooldown indicators is incredibly slow and slows the game down. Who thought a small grey thing moving upwards would slow the game down? But it does. So because of some code somewhere. So we need to fix that before we go and say do a traffic light system or whatever. Right. So let's move on. But range indicators very important.
Yeah.
Right. So why is the Lore Wizard not blessed us with lore?
Yeah, sorry.
Jim is the Lore Wizard.
Yeah, so we'll have to get the Goliath skin stuff up there. It's not
Isn't
much.
the short version? Do you want ships or lore?
Yeah, the short version is content or lore. Yeah, it's a juggle. We will get more out there. Hopefully we'll get the Goliath stuff up, just so you've got this tiny little bit. All curious stuff. I also have bios for the crew members we have that we could stick up somewhere. But as possibly some stuff on the manufacturers. But yeah, it's time, and hopefully I'll get some time where we can get some more out there. But
at the moment, there's always something to do.
Yeah,
and
we
normally revolving around ships.
There's working on the game that exists. There's adding more content to the game that exists, and then there's lore, and lore often gets left.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's not. I know it's frustrating, but it's not for me. It's not a bad thing specifically because the game evolves, and you want the lore to fit hand in hand with the game and the game mode. So, for example, early drafts of our universe didn't really deal with the concept of resource and capturing resource in the context of a battle, because we didn't really get that mechanic in early enough. So, but we completely turned around our priorities. We managed to get it in. We're very happy. That law wouldn't work in the context of the current game because it didn't support a vital game mode. And as the game mode's evolving, we want to make sure that the main reasons we're giving you fit with what the game is.
Absolutely, and if you want to know more about the lore, look down the camera, look into his eyes, because it's all in there, and there's nothing we can do about it, because I don't know enough, and it's all stuck in that brain. What can you do? It's stuck in your head, and there's no getting it out until we get some time.
Once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away.
I think somebody's done that. So somebody says, so the ship unlocks will be more like World of Tanks and War Thunder? Sort of.
Yeah, I mean...
Hybrid, I think, is the short version.
Yeah, something we've noticed, I mean, Tanks actually does this, where the early tiers are incredibly simple to play, and the game kind of hits its stride around tier 4 or 5, possibly at 6 and 7. And I've known so many people that played Tanks a bit and played tiers 1 and 2 and thought this is really shallow and walked away and missed what Tanks has. And so we're aware that there's dangers in the approach of trying to lead people in. You've got to be grabbed by those early parts of the game. And the other thing Tanks does, of course, is it breaks those tiers up into battle tiers where the tanks get better and better and better as you move through, but they're always match-made on overlapping tiers of ships. We're kind of keen, because we have a game where you have respawns and because we have a game where you evolve in the game, we have to be careful that when you go into the game, the teams are fair. And the teams are actually quite small as well, so you don't get the freedom of movement that a team 15 versus 15 has. So they won't the plan isn't necessarily that we have battle tiers like they do, where the tanks get better and there's overlap between the plays. Theoretically, any group of ships that are match made together, played together, will be balanced. The movement through the tier in a set of ships would be through difficulty of play, so that you get something that's harder to play but more rewarding if you can play it. But it's balanced against an easier to play ship that possibly gives less satisfaction because you're not getting those combo kills or
The
good
answer,
KD
the
rates.
answer in a nutshell.
Is it? Did that make sense?
No, I hope, yeah, that does make sense. But it's
Yes, but no.
it's
Yes, but
evolving.
no.
Well, like we said, it's a hybrid of
Yeah.
a few different
Yeah, it's
things.
probably a better answer.
So there's some very funny comments about nerfing blah de blah and how buffing whoop de whoop would be better.
Whoopie whoop. That's the sequel. That's the
And then it
follow-up.
moves on to I don't know if it's missed, but is there a fix for the sniper's extreme range not shooting where the indicator is aimed?
Right, yeah, we were looking at that today actually. That's not. I believe the issue with the sniper has an incredibly long range. Along the lengths of the lanes, it's something like 60,000 units, and possibly excessive that now. And the sniper pretty much has a range that goes 60,000 units. But
those are unreal units. It's not real anything. It's just
it's centimetres. It's actually just 6 meters long. They're tiny.
They'll blow people's minds.
It's all in the shoebox. But the thing is, because we have a turret system that moves in 3D, turrets fire to a convergence point, and normally that convergence point is the target. But a weapon will have an extreme convergence point, where that's as far as it will go. So if a target's beyond that, the weapon will aim to hit the point in 3D space before the target. I believe, but I haven't actually checked because we're literally looking at it this afternoon, and the issues with the sniper's range either occur because you're aiming at a solid object between you and the target, in which case you're converging too close, which is just making sure that we make it very clear in the game when that happens. And otherwise it occurs at extreme range, not just sort of medium to long, but extreme range, where the maximum convergence point of the sniper weapons appear to be too close, so that it converges. If you imagine James's finger is the sniper, it converges here, so it shoots through and goes underneath rather than shooting through to the bottle.
That would make sense from what I know from the way it works.
I'll have to have a look at it. I'm planning to look at it tomorrow, and if it's just a matter of extending the convergence point, then that should resolve that issue.
Additional on that, there's a bug at the moment about with the range not being, you're not able to zoom in and out.
That should be fixed in a hot fix coming soon.
You might want to mention that because
Bungle was just mentioning about there's some issues with the ship zooms. Somehow pre-Christmas the values on the min-max zooms on the ships changed. I'm not quite sure how. We are aware we're changing a lot of models, and the camera values for the front end coexist with the zoom values, and it could be some got changed by mistake. But the sniper got foreshortened where it wouldn't go quite as far as it should. Those values have all been fixed. We have a hot fix that addresses that, and some other niggling issues like the ability to heal at an enemy base on occasion. So those are all being fixed and going to hot fix that should go out this week.
Yeah.
There won't be any sort of big thing about it. These are just quick issues we're going to get into the game, but you should see those.
So there's a few comments on is there any plans to fix the jumping system as it is too easy to misselect location, and basically everybody agrees. I agree as well. With the widget,
jump, well,
basically
the widget eventually will vanish in its current form. Jump will. The plan currently is to actually have quite an elaborate schematic map of the entire area that will be used not only for you to select jump destinations to, but show locations of objectives, enemy team players, a number of other details like team scores and kills and stuff that should resolve that problem. The widget was always intended to be a relatively quick selection method, and as a result, the ease of making that quick has made it very easy to make a mistake. So the main plan at the moment is, once we've got the HUD working well enough and we have some of the new features in, to move on to alter the system map that we'll be adding, that will allow you to make selections from a point and click rather than a sweep.
the map's not close though. I'm just wondering if it's worth bothering one of the coders and saying, is there something we can do to stop to make it sticky or something.
We should
it's basically
be able to. It's just getting the time.
Yeah,
to
time right now is not good. Not for the next couple of weeks. But certainly,
I mean,
it is frustrating.
Bombard bungle. It's a good term. Bombard bungle with thoughts, and if it's an issue, then obviously it gets pushed up the priority list. We should be able to make it a stickier option. Obviously, that slows down selection. But if you're making wrong selections all the time, that's not workable anyway. So.
Yeah. If it takes half a second longer, but if you guarantee the result, then you might be happier with that.
Yeah. The other thing is, I'm not sure why it vanished, but the idea also was to have an option to double tapping the jump button or hitting it and not selecting would automatically cancel a jump. So that if you had the correct thing selected, you could cancel and re-jump without any loss of cooldown, without any trigger of cooldown. But that's not there. To be honest, I think it's probably worth fixing the widget first.
I think
anyway.
fix the widget rather than make a thing that makes you, because you might have thought you got it right, but you're not quite sure, so you go through with it anyway, and or you cancel them. Yeah. I noticed the sniper's aim will occasionally target the sphere of influence of a control point instead of the ship inside it.
Yes,
so
I noticed that today. Yeah, there's the same thing to the conversions point. Artificially draws the conversions point forward in space, but there's nothing there. It's a transparent sphere that it's hitting, and yes, that will cause the same problem.
There you go.
If you just, I've just selected the new ship, the Goliath, and in about 3 seconds I'm going to fire the engines. If you want to talk about those.
Okay, so yeah.
You say when you're firing the engines. I'll just look at the next.
Well, we'll be polite. So yes, this timing won't work, but we'll do it anyway. Goliath. Bungle's about to play the Goliath, and hopefully what you'll be seeing on the screen as I'm talking will be the engines firing and then triggering the full burn with the audio and some green flame and some orange flame and some nice audio effects that Kieran's done for us.
No, see,
if this doesn't work, I'll be talking and it was already happened or it's going to happen in 5 seconds.
Well, the thing about this, and I mentioned it before Christmas in a stream as well when I was showing off some of this, is that it's based upon the new, I can't remember the chemical, but the new rockets that the NASA are using, in fact.
Yeah.
And it was inspired by, in fact, it looks almost remarkably similar to, which is great, because they do actually fire out green, which is
green and then burns,
and is what it really looks like, which is cool. So yeah,
they look pretty.
Pretty. So going back to from game, I presume you wrote this, Bungle. Map showing direction of looking.
Yeah, is in the maps. You can't see which way you're looking when you're on the mini map.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. On the mini map currently, you're shown by something that has no direction. People who've played the game long enough will know once upon a time the map did actually show your ship's direction. The slowdown that the HUD causes, again, it's James was talking about the cooldown values. When we actually look into it and realise the HUD's causing problems, you look into individual things. The biggest problem we had with the HUD was the update on all the players and their direction, or the player and their direction on the HUD, ridiculously cost too much. We know why, we are going to fix it, but that was pulled at the time basically to increase frame rate very, very quickly for the players. When we've done the HUD refactor and the HUD we're sending data to the HUD in an efficient way, then there shouldn't be a reason why we can't give player directions.
It should be cheap.
We want it in, it will go back in, it's just making sure the frame rate doesn't suffer as a result.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those daft HUD things which doesn't even, you just think, how?
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah Nemo says, any chance of getting an option to switch teams when the balance is greater than ±1? There would obviously be a short-term thing, but what do you think about changing teams? That came up the other day as well, actually.
Well, see, we're moving towards a scenario where teams should be fixed, where people are staying and fighting each other.
I mean, auto balance used to happen in old school games.
What we theoretically will also move towards a drafting screen where you'd be able to switch guys from teams to the other team prior to play. The scenario at the moment where people dropping in and out of play is temporary to let people play games. Having a system that would allow people to auto jump between teams would require an interface to do it, and I guess that's
not necessarily. I mean, you can do it on respawn. It just moves them to the other team. Auto balance used to happen in old games,
which is fine as long as we don't have an economy. But if you have an economy, you can't do it.
Yes, exactly. That gets
stuff up. Yeah, as soon as you have a game where the game itself has value both to the players and the community, and unlocking content, you can't have a situation where one guy can switch teams and either screw the other team or give his friend on the other team a massive
kind of
advantage.
applying a
which
Band-Aid
is
to
why
the problem, isn't
all
it?
these games basically are enclosed, instances where you start and you finish. Our job is to make a game where you don't need to, because we provide you with the abilities to play with your friends, draft teams, select your teams, play a game that you want to stay in. So our job is to make a game where you don't need to do that, I guess, is the short version.
Yeah. So Killer Pigeon. Hey, hold on a minute. That's a ringer. Switching teams before
Crispy.
crispy. Switching teams before match starts would be nice, which is true. Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is. That's all about the drafting screen.
Well, I guess that's the real question, which I didn't answer, is in the short term, we can have ability where rather than jump in and out of a server in order to get on the right team, you can just push yourself to another team prior to the game starting, right? Which is in the short term prior to drafting and prior to well, basically while we have this join in progress thing, allowing people to push themselves to another team when there's space. I guess it's a question of how much time it takes to
implement.
Yeah.
So I mean, because it was not an M, Jiraiya says could it be done in the short term? I suppose the only thing is if you have an economy, not that it matters massively because at the moment because we're in an alpha stage on the economy anyway. Is if I swap to the winning team and if I swap to a team,
join in progress is something we have temporarily prior to having the economy run properly.
That's true.
Whilst we have it, if we can get it in, allowing people to push themselves into an empty slot on the other team is viable in that scenario.
Yeah.
It's just checking out how much time it takes and having the functionality to do it. Possibly if we don't require an interface and it's just a button press that we could put in, we'll have to get back to you.
Yeah, and Bungle crashed the game. I hope you're running debug.
You can't do that on Steam.
No, I know you weren't running debug. I wish you were though, because we've actually had very few recently. So you managed to do it.
I can't get the game to run again, so I'm just showing the leaderboard, and we're on the last question anyway. And you might also want to mention that new gentleman.
Yeah, we could mention that we have a new member of the team. So we have
Finally,
we have Jonathan. Can't remember his surname. It's complicated. He's a guy from France. I'm no good at saying his name. That sounds terrible, but
actually
I can't remember it.
don't know John's
There you
name,
go.
but
So he's joined us, and he is a data analyst. So we do have, and I think we mentioned this on a previous Q&A and on a Thursday as well. We do have a lot of data building up in a big database in the cloud, and it's been not looked at in a great way so far, mainly because the people who would look at it are Jim, and you either want spaceships or law and other stuff, so that would probably not happen very quickly. And also there is some specialism in what he does as well, as looking at all the various sort of axes of data and producing a result. So Jim can ask him a question and he can go, okay, I'll go away, look at the data, and then tell you an answer that hopefully answers your question based on the data that's in there. And it's it's that data. It's also how often people are playing, whether they're finding a weapon particularly enjoyable. All this kind of stuff is coming soon, so that will be really interesting. And as we've said before, we will be sharing sharing that data as well, so that people can see some of this stuff. Because I think you'll find it as fascinating as we do.
Yeah, I mean it's something we wanted for ages and have been pushing for, and it's great that John started, because until that point where you're taking in data from games and you're seeing how people play and understanding in the context of a game and multiple sessions of a game how much damage a specific ship does to another ship, how people last, what an encounter duration is, all the kind of information we can cull from gameplay, our game won't be balanced until we can start building on that kind of data, and the more data we get, the better the game will get. And until then, you're making guesswork or instinctively feeling that this ship is overpowered or underpowered, and when you've got real data, then that's fact. That's something that you can't shy away from, or you have to fix. And also, it tells you how to fix it. So, yeah, we're looking forward to getting that.
Which is cool. So there's looking at leaderboards. So the thing about the leaderboard is it's better than no leaderboard, but only a little bit better than
There's
no
a
leaderboard. because
number of things
there's
wrong.
some-
There's a number of things wrong with it, which we can go over. One, I should say up front that the formula that currently runs the honour side of the leaderboard is incredibly simple. We expect it to evolve, I think, as I've said before. But also, there's something worth. We haven't cleared down any data, so there's data on the leaderboard for kills that is goes back a lot further than data for things like games completed. So as a result, the formula used doesn't work. There's guys on there, if you look, and even guys internally, that theoretically have no games but will have 37 kills. Until the data matches up. Also, for some reason, game completion should be a varying percentage between 0 and 100. It only ever shows a 0 and 100. So we're looking into some bugs there is with the data. When we've resolved those and everything's working properly, we'll look into making some changes to the formula itself. So, for example, at the moment, it is possible to have a really, really good game and complete it, and as a result top the leaderboard with a single game. That shouldn't be possible, obviously. But likewise, we don't want a game where it takes games completed into such an account that the more games you play, the higher up the leaderboard you go. It should be down to player skill and performance in the game itself. So the formula will be an ongoing development. But at the moment, we've got to fix some fundamental bugs with the data and the way it's presented, which we're doing now.
Leaderboard, needs some work, and also the amount of games you need to play will be involved in the formula in time.
Yeah.
So that if you happen to play one game and we're also
that will be resolved later.
that will be resolved as well on there. So there's a conversation going on there which is going past quite quickly, which I'm trying to keep up on. Rainbow Dart says the stream's making me excited. Thank you very much. There is a lot of exciting stuff going on. Honestly, if you look around the place and saw things that I can see, ships being built, boards with features being sort of new features being discussed, things being crossed off, stuff going on behind my back, which I think would be very cool. Now I'm where I sit, I should say.
My task list getting longer.
Your task list getting longer. People are going too fast. Well, they spoke of the new game mode. Are we talking about our game with a new game mode? I mean, our game mode is evolving all the time.
Yeah.
And the changes to the I suppose end game and stuff is not far away, really. We've got to do some internal tests on it. So there you go. We've got. Let's see what's saying on there. We've got to mention that is that really Space Invaders behind the Russian captain?
No, it's a
something.
22nd century remake of Space Invaders. Actually,
Or something like Space Invaders.
Cosmic Invaders. No.
Something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But there's also there's a reason for some of those things in the artwork, but
We'll do that another day.
We'll do that another very much another day. And then Bungle's busy typing up something. Is that you about to type up one last question, Bungle?
Yeah.
He's busy typing up. He could say it, but he's typing it. What is the gas power level based on, to be certain?
I don't really understand it myself.
The gas facility basically is a one-off buff that's rewarded on capture that is available 3 times in the game, and the value of it goes up as you go through the game. So the first time it captured, you get a relatively low buff for a period. The buff is bigger on the second and even bigger on the third. So eventually the risk reward of capturing it goes up the further into the game you go.
Yeah, so it's marginally worth capturing, moderately worth capturing, and really worth capturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, hopefully that helps on that answer.
It's just worth saying that the gas facility is an evolving, will be changing still. It's important for us to move it away from the resource component into a temporary buff and a retriggerable buff, but it will still evolve beyond its current state.
Mention tomorrow.
So there you go. We've got a few people coming in. So WeTrace says hello.
Hi.
Although we're just about to finish.
Bye.
Yes, Jingles. He's great to us. He's a great guy, actually. Really nice guy. And he mentioned the game, which is good because that's hopefully more people are becoming aware of it, and then you can tell people, and so on and so on and so on. And that was the last question. So I think.
Mention tomorrow's playtest.
And right, yes, no, absolutely. Thank you, Bungle.
Thursday night playtest.
So Thursday night playtest. So 7 till 9 GMT approximately. We'll be playing on tomorrow, and it's obviously a good time to play because lots of people come and play at the same time. So lots of games going on. We'll have lots of the devs in there. So if you like dev killing, which is entirely possible because some of us aren't that good. Or are relatively predictable in what we do. So that's fine. We'll be there tomorrow. So I think that's about
which you
it.
can point to by pointing to your left.
So if I point to my left or down?
Level with your nose, point to your left. Your left.
My left, like that.
Yeah.
If you look on screen somewhere, it says
So somewhere
tiny URL.
That's what it says. So just there, it mentions TeamSpeak. So yeah, please do join a TeamSpeak because again, there'll actually be probably not just us, but several of the devs on TeamSpeak as well. So if you've got particular questions, they might dive in as well, or they might just particularly scream and in horror as you kill them.
Yeah, so I mean, Stanith and Tunzilla and Willis and lots of others will be there. Al probably won't be at the moment. Be sick, I think.
Well, actually, the other just before Christmas, he was there, but he was ethereal.
He came in from home, which he would do, but
Yeah.
I suspect he might be sick tomorrow, so he might.
Oh dear.
He might be.
Yeah, it's that time of year. So anyway, thanks very much for doing the QA. So QA again in a couple of weeks, and playtests on Thursdays with every week, and keep filling up the forums with questions, things to talk about. We'll keep making the game better and better based upon what you say. So yeah, hope to talk soon. All right, cheers then.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Now we're just going to stare at the screen until it goes black.
We just wait for Bungle to release us.